Are we sitting on stolen land?
It's possible. I mean, there may be cases. There may be cases where it was clear that a certain territory belonged to certain people and it was taken from them unjustly. Maybe cases, but one shouldn't presume that. First of all, because this title, First Nations, is misleading if you imagine that what you had here before European colonists arrived, you had indigenous peoples all living happily side by side, and they've been sitting on the same piece of land since time immemorial. So every First Nation was the first one to sit on this land. Well, that ain't true, because, as I said, in this part of the world, there was constant slave raiding, constant warfare, constant displacement of one people by another. So when British settlers first arrived here, what they found was, yes, this native people is sitting on this piece of land, but only because they pushed another native people off this piece of land 100 years ago, and so forth. So in fact, this nation is not the first nation, this is the umpteenth nation, and the settlers are just the umpteenth plus one, right? So insofar as First Nations implies that these are ancestral lands that have been in the possession of this people forever, probably not true.
Should I have started our event this evening with a land acknowledgement?
If you were being serious, then I take it you were planning to return it. If you're being serious. But I wouldn't make it because it's quite possible this land didn't really belong to any native people in the past. It may have been land they were happy to have settlers settle on because they had their reserves elsewhere. And besides, I wouldn't acknowledge it generally simply because it does rather imply that all of us here who live here, I don't live here, you do, all of you here who are not indigenous, frankly, you are uninvited guests. In fact, you're uninvited invaders. You don't really belong here. And I don't think that does race relations in Canada any good at all. I really don't think it does. So I wouldn't make the acknowledgement myself, and I certainly know people in Australia, very senior politicians, who in principle refuse to make such acknowledgements. Yeah.
So were Indigenous people passive victims of colonialism, or were they active participants who had real intentions and power to shape to a greater or lesser degree what was happening to them? And does it matter if they did have power and intentions? Do we do Indigenous people a disservice to see them as powerless victims?
So as I recounted in the story about the Hudson's Bay Company and native peoples in these parts in the early 1800s, clearly what happened there was a negotiation. The peoples were not simply dominated by white people. And my sense is the same happened in Eastern Canada. I mean, one of the happy features of the colonization of this part of North America as opposed to what was further south is the numbers of colonists coming to Canada were much fewer. Most people emigrating from the British Isles to North America preferred to go to the US. Why was that? I don't know. It may have been because it appeared as if the opportunities there were greater.
Better weather.
Much better weather. But because the numbers of settlers was fewer here, it meant that native peoples weren't so overwhelmed, so there was more negotiation. And so certainly native peoples did have agency.